Alright guys, welcome to the final part of this tutorial where we're going to put in a bunch of Supabase and SvelteKit logic. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to grab the current profile. If it's coopercodes3@gmail.com, we're going to try and grab the information for this user. If the profile data is undefined and the current user is coopercodes3@gmail.com, right? Then we want to make a new profile because that person just logged in and they don't have a profile yet. Otherwise, we want to say if profile data exists and it has data inside of it, which we'll talk about in a second, show coopercodes3@gmail.com data to user. Because remember, this is like a link tree, so anyone should be able to see this guy's data no matter if they're logged in or not, or if they're the user or not. And then finally, if no data exists, say no profile. So there's no profile for this current user. And we have to be really specific about this logic because sometimes when a user logs in for the first time, they just won't have a profile. So we want to make sure it hits this part first. If these two fail, that means that the current person just has no profile at all. So let's get started by trying to grab the current profile. We can do this by saying await supabase.from. From allows us to put in a certain table name. For example, profiles, which again is the table we created previously right here. .select. This allows us to only get certain columns out of data. So I'm only going to ask for the description and then the Pokemon underscore IDs to show to our user. And I'm going to say .equals. So it's going to find a profile where it reaches a certain condition. This condition is going to be the email column is equal to the email passed into our route right here. So if coopercodes3@gmail.com has a profile. And we can save this response by saying const is equal to this. And then we can say data is equal to profile data. And then error is profile error. I know our line is kind of running away here. Hopefully you guys still understand what's kind of going on. Is this profile data is actually the return data from the request. So what did we say before, right? We can just follow our logic. If the profile data is equal to undefined and the email is equal to the session.user.email. Yes, very clever, I know. So we can use the current session's email compared to the link. That means that this person is the current logged in user. And we are then going to create some save profile logic right here, which we're not going to create quite yet. Else if, in a different condition, we're going to say the profile data doesn't equal null, so something exists, and the profile data.length is greater than 0. This is because this profile data right here is actually going to be an array of objects, and so that first object is going to be the user's data for that profile. I'm then going to say that current profile, this profile right here, is going to be equal to that first object. Check it out, profile data of 0. And it's kind of sneaky because we're able to do that because look at the structure of the object of the data we're getting. Description is any, Pokemon IDs, any, right? Description and Pokemon IDs, the exact same structure. So we can just save it in this object right here, which makes things pretty simple for us. In an else statement here, I'm then going to console.log. This person has no profile. And a sneaky way I'm going to manage this is I'm actually just going to set the profile object equal to a description of this user does not have a profile yet. And I'm going to set the Pokemon underscore IDs equal to an empty array. And so this is like a sneaky way of doing it. You can show like an error page, but this makes our logic super simple. And so if there's no profile, it's going to show this. And right now we haven't made the save profile logic yet. So if we go to our site, it's going to show the no profile. So a few things we can fix is we actually want the Pokemon to load at the end of this subscribe once all this logic is determined. And we're not even showing the user's profile description yet. So let's go fix that. So this await refresh Pokemon data, we actually want to put at the bottom right here. We can, close these console logs, I think. And so that way, if we set Pokemon IDs to nothing, then it's going to load down here nothing because it's going to run this code first. And down here where it says user's description here, we can then say profile.description. And we can save that, and let's go back to our site real quick. So it's actually showing us that this user does not have a profile yet, which is actually the intended logic. Oh, guys, and I was actually wrong about one aspect of this here. Instead of saying profile data is undefined, because it's actually going to be just an empty array, I want to say question mark dot length is equal to 0, which is a bit of some different logic because what's happening is it's actually doing this request properly and it's getting no data for that certain request. We actually wanted to try and save the profile because this current person needs a profile. So my bad, that logic was a little off, but hopefully that's a learning point. Is we want to make sure that this is the case where it does the request successfully, it finds no data, and then if there's no data and the user is also the current person who owns that row, then we want to save the profile. And so if we refresh over here, we have our saved profile here, which is absolutely great. And so if we're not the logged in user, for example, coopercodes2@gmail, then we'll get this user doesn't have a profile yet. And if we go to coopercodes3, it's going to say, let's try and make a profile for this guy. So now we can go make a function to actually save the profile of our certain user. So I'm going to make a very simple async function save profile. This is going to do the same request right here for getting the profile data. And instead, I'm just going to grab all the different rows. So just with a star at the select instead. And I'm going to say if profile data (length) is equal to 0. Then what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to do an insert. We're doing this if else statement because if the length is 0, then we just want to create a new row in our database. If it's not, and we know that the user has a profile to save, we need to then update the profile row. And so a brand new row is going to be await Supabase dot, and we can do these on one line is how you see these sometimes. So dot from profiles and then dot insert. And then now it's all the different values for our different columns. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to say dot 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 profile, which is the spread operator on our profile, which is going to fill up the description and the Pokemon IDs. Then we want the user underscore ID to be equal to the session (user) (ID). And these question marks are just to make sure we're safe if session's ever null or if user's ever null. Then we want to say email is equal to session (user) (email). And if we want, we can save these data in const data, error. But for this video, I'm keeping the error checking pretty simple. So just so you guys know you can do this, it's here. Then I can actually copy this. And if we want to update, the update's going to look very similar. We're going to say from profiles dot update. And instead of all these parameters, it only needs a handful. So we can actually just pass in the profile to only update the description and the Pokemon underscore ID. We don't need to update the user ID and the email because it's just going to be the same every time. But we want to update the row in profiles where the user underscore ID is equal to session (user) (ID). You could also do the email here as well to verify that the person is the owner. But I did the user ID here because it's a little bit more secure than just the plain text email. All right, so now down here, we can actually just call save profile and it's going to run all this logic for us. So save profile like this. And an interesting thing here, it's kind of intentional, just so you guys know, is these default values of profile right here. Some can make it like 1, 2, 3 again. This is on purpose. So this is the default that's going to get saved even to a user's database. And if the user ever changes it, we'll then save those changes. And so now we can go see this, first of all, await save profile running. And guys, this await is really important because we want this save profile to run before we refresh that Pokemon data, right? So now we can see it's kind of done it for us. It's kind of a little bit magical. We can go over to our profiles and refresh and see that we have a actual row over here. So this is really cool. So now we can make the functionality edit the user profile. So if we scroll down to our code here, we can see the ending of our grid call right here. So we want to go after the grid, and then we want to say if the email in the link is equal to the session.user.email. If this is true, we want to show all the different functionality for editing your certain site. And so I'm going to say button class is equal to btn-info. It's going to say edit page. And then we are going to make something called a modal. So when we click edit page, we want to show this kind of screen that pops up on top of our screen, which is something from Daisy UI that we're going to use. So in this onClick, we have a function here, and it's going to set a variable we're going to make called isModal open. It's going to set it equal to true. So if I scroll to the top, we can define this variable up here, and we can just say let isModal open be equal to false initially, right? So we don't want some screen to pop up right when the person joins. Only when they press edit page, we want it to pop up. And then we can make a dialog element, which is going to hold this little screen that pops up, and it's going to be class is equal to modal min width of large class modal dash open is equal to is modal open. Oh, make sure to say class like that. And so the modal open class is only going to show if this is true. And inside of here, we can do a little class of modal dash box, which is the window that's going to pop up for our users. And I'm just going to make an H3 edit your Poke page. And so if we go click on this now, we can check it out. We can refresh and it's going to show us this thing. And there's actually no way to get out. The only way to get out is to click the button to save the edits. So let's go make that button now. I'm going to go down here and say button class is equal to btn-success. So it's a green button. It's going to say save edits. When we leave this modal, I want the on click to be equal to an arrow function. It's going to call save page edits, which is something we are going to create. And this is going to run all of our saving of the Supabase logic and everything like that. So you can take the save page edits and scroll up. And I'm going to create it under this. And I'm just going to say async function save page edits. And I'm just going to have it say console.log saving for the time being. Now let's go down here and finish up the user interface. Oh, and inside save page edits, we want to do the is modal open is equal to false. We're going to do some more logic, but that's going to be in a second. So down here, we're just going to have edit your Poke page and then just a little description of what this site does. So here you can make edits to your page, such as description or Pokemon selected. So for the user to edit their description, I'm going to make a little P here that says edit your description. It's going to be a class of text-white P-2. And then we're going to make a text area. So this is like a big spot for them to have their text. And I'm actually going to bind the value, which is something you can do in SvelteKit, which is really interesting, where whatever the value of this text area is, it's going to sync up with whatever the value of profile.description is. So this profile.description is always going to stay up to date to what we currently have. I'm going to make the properties like this, where they're all in one line. I'm going to say the class is equal to text area dash bordered. And then there's a lot of stuff we got to add here. Text area dash large, then width of full, max width of medium, and then a height of 300 pixels. This is just some styling to get us started with a decent looking text area. So if we press edit page, press save edits, and it will go away. And this value is actually getting synced up to whatever this description is. So if I say, hello, you watching this, I can then press save edits. And boom, there it's going to go. That's kind of scary, so I'm going to go back to Pokemon Red. It's my favorite game. But you can change this to whatever you want, and eventually we're going to save these changes to our database. One thing that's going to be kind of wild is we're going to make a way to select certain Pokemon, which is as simple as I can make it. We're going to make a P class is equal to text-white P-2, and it's going to say select your Pokemon. I'm then going to make a div. The class is going to be equal to grid-calls-3, overflow-y-scroll. So once this hits a certain height that we define, for example, max height of 600 pixels, that is going to begin scrolling once it's larger than 600 pixels. And so now we're going to do a margin of 3. And you guys remember how we have that super long list of all the different Pokemons? It's on Pokemon lists right here. It's getting that list of Pokemon right here. We can go down here and actually loop through each Pokemon. So we can say for each Pokemon list as Pokemon, comma, index. And this is going to allow us to create little elements for each Pokemon. Oh, and then slash each. And so it's just going to be a simple button where I'm going to have a div in here inside the button where it's going to say class equal text-center. And it's going to be h2 class is equal to text-white, text-xl. This h2 is going to show the current Pokemon.name. And this is a way to show every single Pokemon that the user can select. And the button is going to be a class of card, background-slate-700, let's do, and h-12, padding 1, margin 1. I know this is kind of advanced in the Tailwind. It's because you got to get these super small little elements with just a little padding around it. Then it's going to be justify-center and items-center. So the text is aligned to the middle of this button. So let's go see what this looks like real quick. So you can see we have this full list of Pokemon. And so eventually we want the user to be able to click on a certain Pokemon. How we're going to do this is if a Pokemon ID is in our profile, we want it to be highlighted with a little border that we can click on or click off. One thing I'm going to do in this class right here, which I'm just going to put on a different line like this, I'm going to put this like this, is we want to add a certain class. So we're going to say plus, then we're going to do a conditional statement saying profile.pokemon_IDs.includes index plus 1. The Pokemon are 1 indexed because they start at 1, and then arrays are 0 indexed, they start at 0, right? So to get the current ID of the Pokemon, we have to do index plus 1. And that's going to give us the current Pokemon ID. So if our Pokemon IDs includes the current Pokemon we're rendering, I then want to show a certain border. So I'm going to say border-2, border-blue-600. And if the Pokemon isn't in our Pokemon IDs in our profile, I just want to show no more classes. And so this is kind of advanced functionality, but it's going to make it so, if it's currently on Pokemon 4 and we have Pokemon 4 in our IDs, it's going to highlight it with this border. So let's go check that out. Oh, guys, and I forgot to wrap this one all the way around like that. And so that's going to mess up your functionalities. This statement has to be in one little contained thing because it's eventually going to be evaluating to this or this. So make sure to save that change and we can go take a look. Oh, I messed up again. Here we have to go and add a space to the end of this because this item center needs a space to be separated from this new border right here. So make sure to save that. And now we can see all of our selected Pokemon are being shown here. So one way to make this very simple is when a user clicks on, let's say this Ivysaur right here, it's going to either take away or add. So it's kind of like toggling is a way you could think about it. So we can toggle each Pokemon by just clicking it because these are all buttons. I'm going to make a little on click and it's going to run a toggle Pokemon of index plus 1. Toggle Pokemon is something we are going to go create. So let's go up here and make an async function, toggle Pokemon. And so to simplify this code, I'm going to say let Pokemon IDs is be equal to profile.pokemon_IDs. And pretty much if we have like 1, 2, 3 is our current Pokemon array, and we want to, let's say, toggle 2, and so we have to have this ID, which is going to be a number right here. Then we want to have an end result of just 1, 3. And then if we were to run this again, where we say toggle Pokemon of 2, so toggle 2 again, we want to then add to 1, 2, 3. And so there's a couple of cases here for what we're doing. The first thing is make sure we never have more than 3 Pokemon is something I'm doing. And then if array has ID, remove it. If, and this is going to be the Pokemon IDs, has ID, then remove it. And so if it doesn't have the ID, then we want to add it. So if Pokemon IDs dot length is greater than or equal to 3 and not Pokemon IDs dot includes ID, because if it's equal to 3 and it includes it, it means we want to take it out is a way to think about that. Then I'm just going to do a simple alert statement here where we say you can only have 3 Pokemon maximum. And then I'm going to return right here. And this return is important because it stops us from modifying the array down here. So if Pokemon IDs dot includes a certain ID, then we are going to get the index of where that ID exists by saying let index is equal to Pokemon IDs dot index of the certain ID, and then Pokemon IDs dot splice index 1. What this is doing is it's saying take a chunk out at a certain index and take out 1 element. So if we were at index 2, it would take out index 2 pretty much, and everything would slide into place. Otherwise, we want to add it to the array, which is going to be way simpler of just Pokemon IDs dot push ID. Super simple logic there, just adding it to our array. And because we are modifying this Pokemon IDs right here, I want to make sure to set profile.pokemon_IDs is equal to ... again, the spread operator of Pokemon IDs. And so guys, this is some pretty wild functionality, especially if you're newer to JavaScript, but hopefully it's really helpful practice. We can then save this. So let's go back over to our page and you'll see we're able to actually edit this. And it's kind of like magic where turning it on, turning it off. And if we choose an extra one, it's going to say, you have too many Pokemon, but boom. And so we can really choose anything here. Let's actually change the save edits to be at the bottom, and then we're going to work on the actual saving logic of all this. So that save edits button is right here, and I'm going to put it on the bottom right here. So let's make sure that looks good. Edit page, boom, 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 amazing. And so inside of our save page edits, it's going to be super simple. We can go up there and just say, await, save profile. Because remember, profile is always just backed up to what our current profile is. And so we don't need to tell it anything. It's just going to save the current state of our object that we are always having up here. And then after our profile is saved, if the user selected different Pokemon, we want the data for those Pokemon, right? So we can say await, refresh, Pokemon data right here, and of course, close the modal. So all right, let's go and see if all this functionality works. All right, so here it is, our current profile. Then if we edit, and let's say I want to do all the Charmander ones like this, and say, here is my newly updated description. Let's go down here and press Save Edits. Boom, it's going to save and show me all these different new ones. And even if I go over to Supabase, you'll see it's going to show me, here is my newly edited description with the new Pokemon IDs. So guys, we've created the full functionality. One last thing we can do here is we can add a little search bar so the user can search for a certain Pokemon instead of scrolling forever. And there's definitely better ways to do this, but I made it simple for the tutorial. So let's go over there and add that search bar. So I'm just going to make a little let search input equal to an empty string initially at the top. And if you guys are at the end of this board, I'm about to show you a JavaScript secret, okay? There is a secret in JavaScript, and you're about to learn about it. If we have a search input like this, we can easily sort data, very easily. And it's one of the best ways to implement kind of text search into your application. So one thing is, before this each statement, we're gonna make a div, which is gonna span 3 columns. So call-span-3. And I'm going to make an input, type is equal to text, class is equal to input dash bordered width dash full. I'm just going to space these out so they look nice. Finally, the placeholder is going to say search for a Pokemon. Then we are going to bind this value equal to that search input variable we just made. So it's going to initially be an empty string. As the person types, it's going to update search input with the new characters. Something really interesting we can do in this each statement is we can make this is the trick I was talking about, guys, is we can make an if statement. Say if Pokemon.name.includes search input. And so something interesting here is includes going to help us out, where it's, if I have like Charmander and the search input is actually an empty string, it's actually going to return Charmander. So if it's an empty string, it's going to give everything. But if you start typing, like let's say I was typing char into the search input, it's going to show me Charmander, Charizard, everything like that, because this Charmander has char inside of it, right? And so this is a really interesting way to make text search pretty fast in your applications with using just one line of JavaScript. And so we can actually just end this if statement down here and press save. Let's go back over. Let's refresh this page. We can press edit page and check this out. Let's say I want Bulbasaur. It's going to do the search for me. If I want Blastoise, it can do that. And so I can take away Charmeleon, add Blastoise, click here, and then I can scroll down to save my edits. I'm not gonna lie, this is a pretty cool Pokemon lineup. But yeah, that's kind of the whole tutorial here. And an interesting thing to see is if we go to an incognito window and go to the same link, we are going to see this person's description and everything from a completely anonymous, not even logged in user. So you could send this link to anyone and it will show your Pokemon. All right, guys, this definitely was a longer tutorial. So thank you so much for watching all this. And I really hope this was a great introduction into SvelteKit. There's a bunch of really interesting JavaScript, SvelteKit, Supabase, just everything in this tutorial. And it really is what I wish I had when I started SvelteKit. So hopefully this gets you guys started on your SvelteKit journey. If you're interested in my channel, feel free to check it out. But again, thank you to the NetNinja for allowing me to have this video. If you found my explanation kind of style interesting, you can follow me or subscribe to me at Cooper Codes on YouTube. But again, thank you to the NetNinja for having me on the channel here. All right, guys, see ya.